Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, welcome to a new video. Today I am wrapping up the books that I read in May, and I am super unprepared for this video, so I'm just going to try to spitball some stats at you, okay? I read a total of 15 books in May, which I was super proud of. I tried my hardest to get out as many books as I could towards the end of the month because the beginning of the month I was definitely in a reading slump. And so for the books that I read one cozy mystery, the first cozy mystery I've ever read. I read 3 novellas. I read 6 romance novels. I read 3 graphic novels. I reread 1 book, and that book happened to be the only book in May that I gave 5 stars to. Not a single other book got a 5-star rating for me in May, and unfortunately, I feel like I'm becoming pickier with 5-star ratings, which is ridiculous because I hate it when people are picky with their 5-star ratings. So it's either that or I'm just not reading books that I love, which I do feel like I read a lot of books in May that I got recommendations for, and the certain recommendations didn't work for me, or they just didn't work for me as much as they did for the people who recommended them. So without further ado, let's go ahead and talk about all of the books that I finished in May. May was another month where I wasn't reading as many books that I own, so we really need to fix that. I need to read more books that I own. Well, let's see. So the first book that I finished in May was Bait and Switch by Angela M. Sanders. This is the first and only cozy mystery that I've ever read, and I gave it 3 stars. This book didn't put me in a reading slump, but it kind of took me so long as a result of my reading slump. It took me way too long to read this book. Basically, this book is about a woman who is kind of on the run because she witnessed something that she wasn't meant to, and now she's afraid for her life. So she moves across the country and starts working as a librarian in this amazing library that was once a mansion and has a library cat. And she finds out that she's a witch. Okay, so I mean, all these things, I was just like, yes, let me read that book. And I did really enjoy this book. I think, and I don't know because this is the first cozy mystery I've ever read, the vibe that I get is that cozy mysteries are more about our protagonist and their life, and more about them rather than the actual mystery, because I do feel like the mystery took a back seat in this book, which I was totally okay with. I really enjoyed this book. I thought it was super cute. I gave it 3 stars. While I did really enjoy it, it wasn't anything that wowed me or anything that just really was super impressive. So it's not like I'm now in love with cozy mysteries, but I will definitely keep reading in this series. I did feel like the magic was a little cheesy. At the same time, I thought it was super cute because she like gets her energy from books and readers, and I thought that was super adorable. There is one thing that I just adored in this book, and it was so adorable. There was this one, the caretaker of the library grounds, kind of like a grumpy curmudgeon, and there is a library employee who works part-time. She's an older woman who works at the library with our main character, Josie, and she is kind of in love with him, and he is kind of oblivious, kind of has feelings as well. And there's a part where the grumpy curmudgeon, because like everyone in the town is a suspect at some point, when he's talking about his alibi, and this is kind of a spoiler, but like not in the grand scheme of things, so I'm not worried about spoiling this, but if you are super worried about it, maybe skip this part. But he's talking about the fact that his alibi is that he was at a floral show because he won an award for floral arrangements, and it's super adorable. And they talk about how about his alibi, and he says that he's like, I've never shot a gun, don't know how. He's talking to Josie at this point, and she's like, I thought hunting was a rite of passage around here. And he says, everyone in town knows, I just had to remind Dolby. In fact, I'm a vegan. Don't approve of violence against people or animals. I just thought that was like, yes, let's subvert expectations with this grumpy curmudgeon of a man that not only is he a vegan, but he's also winning awards for floral arranging, and that's super adorable. So that's just a little side note of this book that I thought was super cute. But I did really enjoy this, so if you're a fan of cozy mysteries, I highly recommend. After that, this was one of the, I wouldn't really call it a recommendation. Somebody who I follow on Instagram talked about it, and it was a novella, and I was kind of in a reading slump, so I was like, let me read something quick and snappy, so I picked this one up. And it was The Beach by R.S. Gray, and I gave this book 2 stars because it could have been a longer novella. It was too short. Like, nothing happens in this book. The steamy scenes and I know it's kind of stupid to assume that all indie romances are going to have super steamy scenes, but the steamy scenes in this book were kind of lame, and like nothing happens in this book. There's no character development because obviously it's a novella. There's not going to be a lot of character development, so just like it was really disappointing. It's kind of just like a beach vacation, best friend's brother kind of romance trope. I don't recommend it. I don't think it was very good. Because it's a companion novella to the Dr. Dearest, which I read in April, and that one was also kind of just like mediocre, and this one was just worse, so don't recommend it. Well, number 1 recommendation that did not go well for me. The next book that I read in May was The Soulmate Equation by Christina Lauren, my favorite romance authors. I gave this book 4 stars. Definitely not a favorite, but I really enjoyed this one. I think I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it a lot more than, not their last book before this one, because that was the, In a Holidays, the holiday book. I did really like that one, but the one before that was The Honey Don't List, and I didn't really like that one that much. So this one was definitely more up my alley. I thought it was super adorable. The premise of this book is that, so there's this woman who is, what does she do? She works in like some kind of number type things. And she is a frequent user of this cafe where her and her best friend, because they both work from home, so they work at this cafe, and they always see this guy come in, and they call him Americano because he always orders an Americano, and he's kind of not rude per se, but he's kind of just like, he doesn't fit in with their hippie vibe of the cafe, and so they make fun of him and they call him Americano. And then if they come to find out that he's actually developing this dating service where people are matched based on their DNA, and because her best friend who she works with at this cafe is a romance author, they get invited to kind of check out the setup, because the company thinks that having a romance author come would be great advertisement for them. So they decide to check it out, and it turns out that they let them submit their DNA, and our main character gets matched with the grumpy Americano guy. And so it's basically just about them, and them kind of being asked to not fake date per se, but to try dating out, because if they have a success story, that would be fantastic for the company to see that one of the founders of the company is also using the service, and how successful it's been. Kind of fake dating, kind of not. Really fun, really funny. I really liked this book. It kind of reminded me a bit of The Hating Game by Sally Thorne, just in the way that the main characters kind of react with each other, because they kind of hate each other in the beginning, and then they slowly get to know one another, and I feel like their chemistry was really well done. I really liked this novel. I highly recommend it if you're a romance reader. If you're not a romance reader, I feel like this would be a great start. Next, I read a graphic novel that was a recommendation that worked for me, kind of. So this was Descender Volume 1 by Jeff Lemire. And this was a recommendation from Ashley over from A Frolic Through Fiction. She did a "if you like this, read this" kind of video, and this was a recommendation based on Sleeping Giants by Sylvan Neuvel, which I really enjoy. And so this graphic novel is about let me try to explain it. It might be a little difficult. It is science fiction. It's about this galaxy kind of empire where in the very beginning of the novel, this kind of giant AI robot enemy thingamajig kind of kills a lot of people, destroys a lot of stuff, and later, I don't remember how much later it was supposed to be, they find this little AI robot who has similar like configuration or similar function, it's just similar making maybe, and so they're trying to find this little robot to kind of try to figure out what this big giant robot thing wants, if it's going to come back, so forth, so on. That's kind of the basic gist of it. I really enjoyed the overall plot, the concept. What I didn't enjoy is the fact that it made me think of the movie Artificial Intelligence. That book, I mean, that movie is not like terrifying. It's not scary at all, but it has scarred me in a way that it's very strange. It's just like, I don't know, it's so disturbing. If you've seen that movie, maybe you know what I mean. But it's not a movie that I ever want to see again, and I watched it when I was very young. I think maybe middle school, and it has stuck. I've only seen it once, and it's stuck with me so much that I remember so much of it, and just like, it's so disturbing to me on a level, and this book reminded me of it, and I was just like, I don't like it reminded me of this. If it hadn't, I would have liked it more. But because of that, I don't know that I'm going to continue with the series. I might. But if you're a science fiction fan, I definitely recommend it. If you liked Sleeping Giants, I 100% recommend it because of that. I can see where she got that recommendation from. I am really interested to see like where it goes. It's just like that whole artificial intelligence movie and the comparison there, that kind of just like, I don't like that. So I don't know how I feel about it. I did give the graphic novel overall a 3-star rating, so I enjoyed it, but because of the whole artificial intelligence thing, I just don't know. I just don't know. The next book was another recommendation that was pretty okay. This, I think I was recommended through, I found the recommendation through Books Like Whoa is the channel. Mara, I think her name is. She recommended Katie Wilde, I think in general, or maybe she did recommend the novella. It's the Midwinter Mail Order Bride, which my first question is like, why would you name a book that? Because immediately I was just like, I'm not gonna read that. But then I read the synopsis and I was like, okay, well, I might read that. It's just like, first of all, Mail Order Bride is, I can understand, I guess, why she would call it that, but I also feel like at the same time, like, that's not what this is. Anyway, it is a fantasy romance novella about this king who has conquered a lot of kingdoms, and while I wouldn't say that he's benevolent, like he's a good person, but he's like a harsh kind of good, like he's doing good for these people who haven't had that like harsh reality check. And so basically he does write to other kingdoms. He's like looking for a bride as he would as a king, you know, to form allies and whatnot, and nobody responds. And so he finally gets an answer, and he thinks that the woman who is like a princess, whatever, I don't know, doesn't actually want to marry him. And so he's like, no, we're not doing this, because he wants somebody who's like, who actually wants to be with him. And so like the plot of the book is him taking her back to her kingdom, because what she thinks is going on is that there is something insidious happening in her kingdom to her parents, but her parents don't believe her, and they think that she's kind of going crazy. And so it's very interesting. It's got like this kind of, I don't want to call it Sleeping Beauty, but there's an aspect of it that reminds me of Sleeping Beauty. I don't know if that was the intention of the author, but the ending was so good. And for this being a novella, I was kind of surprised by how much I really liked this story. I only gave it 3 stars because I think I needed it to be longer, but I did really enjoy it, and I'm definitely going to continue. I don't know if it's a series, but I think there are other books that have like ridiculous titles, like Mail Order Bride. Honestly, I feel like if she didn't name the book that with that title, she would have gotten so many more readers, because it's a dumb title to me. I'm sorry. It is. But I did really like it. The magic fantasy aspect was so interesting. The ending was so good. I don't usually like reading battle scenes in any type of book, but I actually really liked the end battle type scene at the end. So highly recommend that one if you're into fantasy romance. Just try to get past that title. And I promise well, I can't promise because I don't know your reading taste, but I can guarantee you it's better than what the title suggests it to be. The next book that I attempted to read, not a recommendation, this was Deadmen Walking by Sherrilyn Kenyon. I read Sherrilyn Kenyon's Dark Hunter series when I was in high school. I pretty much read almost the entire series. I mean, it's gotten a lot longer, and I definitely probably haven't read the last 5 out of like 30-ish books, but I read the majority of them. And I really enjoyed them when I was in high school, and some of the books that I've reread since then. And I enjoy, like, she has a science fiction series as well that I really enjoy as well. So I wanted to read this because it's kind of a spin-off of that first series, the Dark Hunter series, but it's like Pirates of the Caribbean twist, because there's a little pirates twist there, and I was like, okay, that sounds interesting. And I couldn't with this book. This is probably her first book that I had to DNF. And it's not even because I'm really picky with romance, but it's just like this thing that I think a lot of authors who have all of these books, like, something that they do is where they need to have reveal after reveal after reveal. And so the main character in this book, first of all, his name is Devilbane, and I think that's dumb. Regardless, okay? We learn thing after thing, aspect after aspect of his character, like, and I was just getting tired of it. It was because there's just like, he's this, but then you find out that he's also this, and then you find out that he's also this, and then the love interest also finds out that he's this, and I was just like, okay, that's enough. And after like the 4th or 5th reveal, I was just like, I'm done. I can't listen to this anymore. And I got to, because this is technically, well, I don't know if you would consider it a romance. I think in my library they're shelved in the science fiction fantasy section, but they do have steamy-ish scenes. I say ish because the one steamy scene that I got to was not very good, so, and it wasn't very in-depth, so take that as you will. Didn't really love this. Definitely, I mean, if you like that kind of thing, I don't know. I don't know if I could recommend this book. I will recommend the Dark Hunter series. It's been a while since I read them, but I did really enjoy those when I first read them when I was in high school. And then the next novella recommendation that I got, I think this one I took from Rilke, was Faye's Captive by Lily Archer. This is categorized as a fantasy romance, though I would disagree. What I feel like this author did is that she took a full-length novel and chopped it off into 5 novellas. Decided to publish it that way, which is a choice. I don't particularly like that choice, but it's out there, it's done. So this book follows, I don't remember the main character's name, but she is a college student and her roommate is kind of ridiculous and she hates her. And her roommate basically is like, I will pay you to be my designated driver a lot of money. And because the main character is desperate for money so that she can stay in college, she's like, okay, even though I don't want to because I have a feeling it's gonna go wrong. And what do you know? It goes wrong. And it turns out that her roommate is actually a fae, and she basically takes the main character to the fae world as a changeling, so that she can remain in, or her fae friend can take her place in the human world. So they can party and do drugs and whatever a fae does in the human world. And so the human main character is in the fae world, and she comes across the king of the Unseelie court, I want to say, and it turns out that she's his fae mate, and so he's taken her back to his kingdom under the guise of, I'll help you get back to the human world. And that's kind of like how the first novella ends, in kind of like a cliffhanger. I'm gonna read the next book eventually, who knows when. It was just kind of mediocre I'm liking the world development, so if this had remained a full-length novel, I would have already been finished the whole thing, but no, it's not. So I gave it 3 stars. I'm gonna keep reading. I did like the whole take on the whole changeling thing, but other than that, it was just kind of fine. And here is where another recommendation went wrong. I watched this video, and I'll try to find it and link it below, ranking Mariana Zapata's romance novels, which I'd never read any of them, although I'd always heard of one specific one of her books, but I was like, oh, which one should I start with? I'll start with this person's favorite book. So it is Kulti by Mariana Zapata, and this is a age gap romance, and let me tell you, this, how many pages? This 570 page book is not an age gap romance. It is 90% a book about this girl who really loves soccer and is having this kind of budding friendship with her coach, and then the last 10%, oh wait, we have feelings for each other. So this is not a romance to me, because I'm sorry, this book really pissed me off because I was like waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting, and people will call this a slow burn romance. This is not a slow burn romance to me, because there needs to be like romantic tension for it to be a slow burn romance, and there was none until the last 10% of the book, just because this girl like idolized him when she was a child, and she like grew up through high school thinking that he was like super attractive. That is not romantic tension, you know? Like, just because you find somebody attractive, that's not romantic tension. So I was really annoyed by this book, it being a romance, and so that does not give me hope for her other books. But I've heard that this is, I think this was one of her older books, so maybe her newer ones are better. I don't know. I'm gonna try, give her one more try. So if I didn't spoil the whole premise now, it's basically about this girl who is a soccer champion, and her new coach, Kulti is his name, is a kind of soccer legend, football, because he, European, becomes her, like, not even her coach, but her, like, assistant coach, whatever. And he's basically an asshole. And then she kind of ignores him, can't ignore him because he's the assistant coach, and they kind of start as not even enemies, but kind of like they don't talk, and then they start like a friendship, and then last 10% is romance. I didn't feel romantic chemistry between them until the last 10%, so I can't tell you that their romance is all that great, but their friendship was fine. I didn't really like I felt the main character was very developed, and I liked her. I didn't like Kulti that much, really. I felt like his character was really flat. Really disappointed with this recommendation. Not that I won't take another recommendation from this person, because I do like her videos. I need to find a different book. This book just didn't vibe with me, and I don't like calling it a romance because I felt like it wasn't, so my 2 cents. The next book that I read was for my personal book club. We read The Ice Queen by Alice Hoffman. This book is about a woman who, in the beginning, we find out that she kind of has this obsession with death. Like, she does a lot of research on death. She's a librarian. The FBI, or the police sheriff, calls the library a lot to get her to answer reference questions about death and whatnot. And her grandmother dies, she becomes even more depressed, blah blah blah. She eventually moves to Florida to live close by with her brother, and she gets struck by lightning, which was the most interesting part, like the whole lightning strike, scientific research data information. I don't know if it was true or correct, but it was interesting to read about. And so she, who is like obsessed with death, kind of is also like, she tries to push people away. She doesn't have really good relationships with anyone, and she goes to meet this one man who is also a survivor of a lightning strike, and she kind of builds this relationship with him that goes nowhere. Overall, by the end of it, you get to know is actually about her relationship with her brother, but it wasn't, to me, it wasn't written well. I guess it depends on like what Alice Hoffman's purpose was with writing this book. To me, the most well-developed and interesting part of this book was the the lightning strike stuff, and then her relationship with her brother, which you really only get with like the last quarter of the book. That's how I feel about it. I don't really want to talk much more about this book. It was just fine, not my favorite. I didn't hate it, and it was short enough for me to read quickly enough that I could move on. So there's that. The next book that I read in May was Fever Dream by Samanta Schweblin, and I'm giving this book 4 stars. I actually really enjoyed this. It's written in one continuous scene. There's no chapter breaks, nothing. And usually I would hate that, but I think it actually really worked for this book. So basically, it's going to be really hard to describe this book. This is a weird book. It starts with this woman who is in a hospital room, and she's kind of being interviewed by this boy, and she's just talking about, and you find out that they're trying to pinpoint a specific event or a specific thing that led to another thing. It's creepy, it's ominous, it's weird. It's got a creepy little horse on the cover. I don't really want to give anything more about this book away. If you like horror, I recommend this. I wouldn't really call it scary or horror-like in that way, but it has a kind of, I don't know specifically what it is, but it has an aspect to it that I think would be interesting for people who like horror and who likes creepy and ambiguous things. This has a very ambiguous ending that when I first finished I was kind of confused about, but I think I just really liked the way that it ends. I also really like ambiguous endings. But I really enjoy this book, and I can't really talk about it more without giving it without giving a lot of it away, and I don't want to do that. So again, if you are into horror, if you like weird things, this is also very short. Highly recommend this book. Definitely recommend checking it out. The next book that I read was another recommendation from my Rilke, and that was Parker by Jack Harbon. She read this in a recent vlog, and I thought that she really enjoyed it, and I really enjoyed the last book that I read by Jack Harbon, so I was like, let me give this book a shot. So this is about our main character, Trey, who is coming out of, he's just coming out. He's escaping, literally running away from an abusive relationship. And this woman catches him in the act of stealing, and she's like, put that down, you're coming home with me, I'm gonna take care of you for a couple of days until you can get on your feet. And so he goes home with this woman, and she doesn't try to kill him, so it wasn't terrible or creepy. She's really just like a decent human being who wants to take care of this guy who's having a hard time. And then her son, Parker, who lives with her, I'm pretty sure, they meet. Parker is also, he came from not an abusive home, not as far as I know, but he was also taken in by this woman when he was young, and it's just about them kind of learning about each other and falling in love. And it was super cute. I really liked this book. It was very like a hard-hitting contemporary romance. Really liked it. The steamy scenes were excellent. I was not disappointed in any of those, and I highly recommend it. Especially now that it is Pride Month, I highly recommend this male-male romance. Definitely one of the best ones that I've read in a while, and it was really good. I'm giving it 4 stars. Next we have Delicates by Brenna Thummler. This is the second book in her book about these adorable sheet ghosts. The first book was Sheets. If you don't know anything about this series, the first book was about a girl named Marjorie, who was grieving for her mother who had recently died, and her parents own a laundromat. She was taking care of the laundromat, and she meets Wendell, a sheet ghost, and they form this friendship as they both are trying to overcome different hard things in their lives. Wendell, coming to terms with his death and not being able to be, a boy like he was, and Marjorie grieving for her mother and also like trying to be a teenager. And so the second book is a continuation of their friendship, but it also talks a lot about their Marjorie's classmate Eliza. And Eliza is also going through a lot. She's very heavily bullied, and she is also having a really hard time as a teenager. This book does deal with a lot more heavier topics. I would say definitely trigger warnings for bullying and suicide. This book was very good, and I felt like she handled the topics in such a great way. The only thing I didn't like about this book is that there just wasn't enough of the cute little ghost and his ghost friends. There definitely needed to be more of that. I still highly recommend the artwork is just so beautiful. I love the color palette. I just really like these books, and I like the artist. Story's also fantastic. Also, the cover is just pretty awesome. I mean, like, this is amazing. Eliza her passion is ghost photography, so obviously perfect book for her. And the, of course, best book that I read this month, the only book I reread, was The Trials of Morrigan Crow, Nevermoor, by Jessica Townsend. Of course, gave it 5 stars, as I have every time I've listened to this book. 4 times, by the way. Fantastic. If you don't know anything about this book, where have you been? It is about a girl who is a cursed child, but learns that she's not actually cursed, because she is kind of whisked away by this man called Jupiter North, who is there to kind of rescue her on the day that she's supposed to die as this cursed child. It's about found family, there's magic, there's friendship, there's a giant cat. Love this book so much. It's so good. I highly recommend the audiobook. It's narrated by Gemma Whelan, who plays Yara Greyjoy in Game of Thrones. She's also in the newest Emma adaptation, but I really like the actress, and I think she does a phenomenal job with these audiobooks, and I really just highly recommend the series. I know it's middle grade, but if you liked Harry Potter, you're definitely gonna like this, and you should like it more because the author's not a piece of crap. The next book that I read was Letters to a Young Poet by Rainer Maria Rilke. This is a collection of letters to a poet. And they're basically kind of like inspirational, let me give you some personal advice, life experience type letters. I didn't connect with them that much. I will say there were some quotes that I found that were really good. Otherwise, it was just fine. I'm glad that I read it. It was on the Rory Gilmore Reading Challenge. It's been on my list for a while. I read it from during a readathon. That's all I really have to say about it. And then the last book that I read in May was another graphic novel, and that was Lumberjanes Volume 2 by Noelle Stevenson and a whole bunch of other people. This graphic novel series, it's another children's graphic novel series, and it's about this summer camp where these girls go, and they kind of Lumberjanes and kind of like a Girl Scout kind of thing, where they like earn badges and stuff, and it turns out that this camp has a lot of weird things going on, a lot of paranormal stuff, and it's kind of just about their friendship and defeating these bad things and having fun. This is just, it's such a fun graphic novel series. If you read Nimona by Noelle Stevenson, I highly recommend this series as well. I really liked the way that this one kind of delved into Greek mythology a bit. And so it was really good. I highly recommend it. I highly recommend the series in general. I'm definitely going to keep reading. And yeah, it was a great time. So that is it for my May wrap up. These are all of the books that I read. Kind of a weird reading month, to be honest. I'm going to be really excited to delve into some more books that I actually am excited about reading instead of like I have to read them. Not that I really felt like that way about any of these books, but also I always hope that summer is a great reading time for me, and it never is. But I'm really hoping that I can get into some good summer reading. I've already finished 2 books so far, and it is currently June 3rd. Yeah. And I'm currently 40% through my next book, so it's been a good reading month so far. I'm really excited to keep reading, and hopefully, I say I was in a reading slump, but I still managed to read 15 books. But yeah, I think I'm kind of out of that slump, so I'm excited to get into more reading. So yeah, thanks for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you've read any of these books, let me know what you thought about them. Or also, I want to know what your favorite book that you read in May, or your least favorite book that you read in May, because sometimes it's just nice to have a little hate read sesh. So yeah, let me know in the comments. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you in a new video soon.